All right, let's dive in. Sometimes the best stories, the wildest investigations, don't start with some big dramatic event. They start with something you'd probably just toss in their recycling bin. And in our case, our big clue is a simple newsletter. But this newsletter, it's a key that unlocks a whole world of unexpected history. So let's step into this archive and see what secrets we can find about the world of Sherlock Holmes. And this quote from the man himself really sets the stage, doesn't it? Just like Holmes could find a world of meaning in a bunch of different cards, we're about to see how this collection, with all its weird and wonderful items, tells so many different fascinating stories. The game is on. So you might be wondering, where are we getting all this from? Well, it's not some dusty old book. Our guide is actually this really lively newsletter from the people who take care of the Sherlock Holmes collections. Think of it like our treasure map. It's going to lead us to everything from presidential holiday cards to the secret life of Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay, so our first stop on this tour is something we all know, the good old Christmas card. But as you're about to see, when you're in the world of Sherlock Holmes, even a simple holiday greeting can unravel this whole web of incredible connections. But before we peek at the cards in the collection, let's get a little perspective. The whole idea of Christmas cards started pretty small back in 1843. I mean, only about 1,000 were sold in that first year. But flash forward to today, and wow, we're talking over 2 billion cards sold every year just in the US. It's this huge, massive tradition, which honestly makes the personal, unique cards we're about to see feel even more special. So, check this out. The very first card we pull from the archive reveals this totally surprising link. This isn't from just any old fan. Nope, this is a Christmas card from 1940 sent by President Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. It just goes to show you how far the influence of Sherlock Holmes reached. I mean, all the way into the White House, right in the middle of a world war. And the next card, it really hammers home this idea of community. This one's from a guy named John Bennett Shaw, who was a legendary collector. In fact, his collection is a huge part of this archive. And you can just feel the passion on this card, right? There are little cartoons, nods to famous illustrators, and holiday greetings in 5 different languages. It's not just a card, it's like a party invitation to this global club. And for our last piece of mail, we've got something just wonderfully personal and quirky. This card comes from Frederick Dorr Steele, who was one of the most famous American illustrators of Holmes. But instead of drawing the detective, he includes this super charming poem written from a dog's point of view. It's this whimsical little peek into the real lives of the people who helped create the image of Holmes we all know. All right, so we've been in Holmes's world, but now let's pivot to the man who actually created him, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. We all know him as the father of the detective story, but it turns out this archive shows he was something else too, a real fighter for social justice. Now, to really get why his activism was such a big deal, you have to understand just how tough things were back then. In Victorian England, getting a divorce wasn't just difficult. It was basically impossible unless you were super rich. And the laws were just so incredibly unfair to women. For so many, being in a bad marriage was basically a life sentence. And Conan Doyle didn't just sit on the sidelines and feel bad about it. No, he took action. He teamed up with another literary legend, Thomas Hardy, to push for change. And he wasn't just a member. By 1909, he was the president of the whole organization. And of course, he did what he did best. He wrote. He published this passionate pamphlet arguing for fair and accessible divorce laws for everybody. And his sense of justice didn't stop with divorce laws. He also wrote a poem for a charity album that was sold to raise money for the orphans of journalists. What makes this kind of hit you in the heart is that he probably wrote it while his own wife was pregnant with their first child. You can almost feel the empathy of a new dad wanting to help other kids. And he wasn't doing all this in a vacuum. Conan Doyle was part of this incredible circle of thinkers and creators at London's Savage Club. I mean, just look at this membership list. It's a who's who of the era. Mark Twain, Charlie Chaplin, Sir Alexander Fleming, the guy who discovered penicillin. This was the powerhouse of creativity and intellect he was a part of. Okay, so let's shift gears and follow the detective himself as he travels way beyond the fog of London. The fact that Sherlock Holmes became a global phenomenon is a given, but getting him across borders, well, that came with a whole new set of puzzles to solve. And this slide is the perfect example of the problem. It's not just about translating words. You have to translate a feeling, a vibe. If you literally translate the Hound of the Baskervilles into Norwegian, you get something like the dog of the Baskervilles family. It just sounds clumsy. It sounds like you're talking about the family pet, not some terrifying supernatural monster. all the menace just vanishes. But somehow the translators figured it out. They captured the magic. And this quote from Niels Nordberg, who became a famous Norwegian translator himself, shows you just how powerful those early translations were. A version from 1911 was the first Holmes story he ever read, and it sparked a lifelong passion. And that's why getting it right is so important. It's how you hook the next generation of fans all over the world. And that brings us to the final piece of our puzzle, the fans. These are the people who don't just read the stories. They live them, they study them, and they're the ones who keep the flame of 221 Baker Street burning bright. They call themselves Sherlockians, and let me tell you, this is not your average fan club. This is a global community of incredibly dedicated people who have this playful tradition of treating the stories not as fiction, but as actual history. And all their deep dive research and collecting, they call it the Great Game. And the Great Game has its legends, its superstars. We've already met John Bennett Shaw, the ultimate passionate collector, and then you have people like Dr. Orlando Park, the ultimate scholar. Get this, the guy was a world-class biologist and a jazz pianist who, just for fun, started researching in 1932 and went on to write the very first encyclopedia of Sherlock Holmes's world. Incredible. So think about it. We started this whole journey with just a newsletter, and we ended up uncovering stories of social reform, the challenges of global translation, and this amazing community of fans. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other incredible histories are just sitting quietly in a library or an archive near you, just waiting for someone to come along, open a folder, and start their own investigation? The clues are out there.